All right. Hello, my name is Naveen. I am the moderator today for this session, Introduction to Ansible Playbooks. We have Michael.
Yes, hi. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining the session. I'm going to be doing an introduction to Ansible Playbooks. And this kind of presentation / tutorial is meant to kind of give anyone who hasn't either heard of Ansible or is just starting with Ansible kind of an introduction to what it is, why use it, and how it can maybe make your life easier. Just like a little bit about me, I'm the Director of Technology at Neutron Interactive. I took over as the Director of Technology about 5 years ago, and since then I've had to do a lot of DevOps and infrastructure management. My experiences before then had been doing a lot of things by hand, and if you've configured servers by hand before, you would know that it can be really painstakingly difficult and tedious. And if you're trying to deploy a cluster of servers, you're repeating yourself over and over again. And Ansible allows you to automate a lot of these processes. And so I'm hoping that through this presentation and then kind of the live tutorial that I'm doing afterwards, you can kind of see how Ansible might make your life easier too. I graduated from Gonzaga University with a bachelor's degree in computer science. And I've worked, while I was in college, I worked for a number of startup companies, and I've been with Neutron for about 7 years. So what is Ansible? Ansible is an open source automation platform, and it allows for server provisioning, configuration management, and task automation, and essentially allows you to take your infrastructure configuration and turn that into code. And what's important about that is it allows you to maybe version control your infrastructure configuration. It allows you to scale quickly. And it's very convenient if you're working with clusters of servers. Ansible works by connecting a master server to a number of nodes, or your cluster of web servers or database servers, worker servers, and it pushes out small Python programs via SSH to your nodes and executes them. Once the execution has occurred, it actually cleans up and removes everything from that node as though Ansible was never there. There are a number of other comparable technologies to Ansible. SaltStack, being one of them, is actually based out in Lehi, Utah. I know probably a lot of you are in Utah. We actually use that at Neutron for our configuration management. It was something that I inherited, and I've enjoyed working with it, but there's a number of things that I felt Ansible did better. There's also Chef and Puppet. The core difference between all three of these technologies and Ansible is that Ansible is a push configuration tool, and SaltStack, Chef, and Puppet are all pull configuration tools. What's important about that difference is that all three of these other technologies require you to install a client on the node servers that you're trying to manage. And there's some overhead there. You need to first get into that server, install the client, and then connect that client to your master server or control server in order to get this all working. So if we look at a diagram of an Ansible kind of paradigm, you have your workstation, and you would be logging into your Ansible control server. You will have a file on there once Ansible is installed called your inventory. Your inventory is a list of servers which Ansible is managing. These servers can be grouped and put into hierarchies. We'll kind of go into a little bit more of that later, which allow them to inherit from the hierarchy so that you're not duplicating your configurations. You'll also have a playbook file, and the playbook is a list of tasks which Ansible will execute and essentially bring all of the nodes that you're targeting to the exact same configuration. So you might have configuration management for your database servers. You might want to be creating certain tables on databases. You might be wanting to push certain files onto your web servers or your worker servers to configure certain services, whether they be like an Nginx configuration file or if you're using some type of framework, you're going to want to populate your settings with your production values for your databases or maybe your development settings. Ansible can help with all of that. So why use Ansible? Configuring servers now is essentially a thing of the past. I know in the past years when I look at deploying applications or spinning up a new Elasticsearch cluster, whatever it might be, you might find a lot of tutorials kind of take you step by step through it as a manual process on the server. And it's important to realize all the details that go into configuring a server, but it's also important to realize that that is not ideal in a production environment, or if you're managing, let's say, hundreds or thousands of servers. Ansible also allows you to take those configurations, like I said earlier, and put those into files. And so there's consistency when you decide to orchestrate a new server cluster, or maybe scale your web cluster out, one more server or 100 more servers. Ansible, as well as all three of those other technologies, SaltStack, Puppet, and Chef, have a library of pre-existing modules that allow you to manage things. So for instance, there's system modules, which will allow you to reboot servers. There's packaging modules that will allow you to install whatever services you want on a given server or groups of servers. All of these, when you push a configuration, all of the servers get that almost at one time. And so it's very fast as well if you're trying to bring up a cluster of servers all together at a single moment. It's also important to point out that Ansible is really simple and has low overhead because of Ansible's push configuration paradigm, and meaning that you don't need to install anything on your node servers in order to get Ansible running. All you need to do is copy an SSH key onto the minion server or the node server, and it will be ready to go. So one of the first things that we'll be kind of covering in the live kind of tutorial part will be the Ansible inventory file. And this, on the left, this image is an example of one that's taken from the Ansible website. And like I said earlier, you can group servers together. So these can be domain names or IP addresses, but in this case, we have our web servers and our database servers. Servers can be members of multiple groups. And like I was saying earlier, it's possible to create a group hierarchy if you were to use YAML rather than this INI style inventory format, which comes kind of out of the box with Ansible, and you can inherit from groups. So what is a playbook? Sorry, 1 second. So a playbook, like in sports almost, is a list of kind of commands or actions that you want to execute on a server. You can use JSON in Ansible. I know that there's ways of doing that. There are plugins that allow for that, but Ansible kind of comes out of the box by using YAML files. It's one of the core features of Ansible, and it essentially is a list of tasks which you're going to execute on those servers. Each playbook is going to contain a set of plays, and those are groups of tasks that you organize yourself in whatever particular order makes the most sense to you to execute on a given group of servers. So this is an example of a Ansible playbook. And at the top there, you can see the name of the playbook. There's actually two plays in here. One is updating the web servers, and the other one is updating the database servers. The top play is targeting the web servers group in your inventory file. And below that, you can see the list of tasks. This is just kind of important to point out just because if you were using this in a production environment, you're going to be wanting to target different sets of servers, obviously for different things you'd like to install. And And so I'm not a big slide guy, and so I'd like to kind of get started with the tutorial because that's how I learn the best. I like doing, examples to teach people. And so we're going to be installing Ansible. We're going to be copying SSH keys from the control server onto our 2 minion nodes. We're going to test that Ansible can communicate with the minions by running an Ansible command to do that. We'll create our first playbook, add some simple tasks, and execute that against our minions. We'll then also take a look at the output of Ansible and kind of show you some of the kind of the cool features of managing your infrastructure this way. So let's go.
Michael, I'm sorry. So if you have any questions, the participants, please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A section while Michael is taking you through the next steps. Thanks.
Cool. So I have spun up 3 servers, and all I've done to these servers has logged in and changed their host names so that we can tell them apart. I have my Ansible master, my 2 minions, they're all running Ubuntu 18.04. And yeah, so I'm gonna just SSH into them really quick. I had this all set up. I was having some issues earlier. So just give me 1 moment to get this going. So let's get these kind of set up so you can look at them. So the first step is going to be installing Ansible. So it's always good to do an apt update. Let that go. All right, so now I need to add the Ansible App Repository. So to do that, so now we'll have access to download Ansible onto our control server. And let's install Ansible. So once this is complete, we're going to have an Ansible directory automatically created in etc/Ansible. Oh, sorry, 1 second. My screen seems to not be shared. There we go. Sorry about that. So I updated, did an apt update, and then I added the Ansible repository, and I installed Ansible. And that's where I am right now. I haven't done anything else to these servers. So if I go into the etc Ansible tutorial, or sorry, etc Ansible folder, I will have this hosts file. The host file is our inventory. As you can see, this is all kind of boilerplate stuff. I'm going to take advantage of this web servers group that they have already added. And so I want to add my 2 minion servers to this group. So I will add, whoops, my first one and my second. Now that both of those are added, I need to authorize Ansible to communicate with them. So I'm going to generate a SSH key. And I'm going to copy this key to both of my minion servers. So I'll start with the first one again. All right, so now that both those keys are copied, I can test it. So I can do Ansible and ping all, and I'm hoping that both those servers will ping successfully, which they did. Something interesting you can see just is if we were to tail the syslog and we were to run that again, you can actually see Ansible communicating with it. Ansible is written in Python, so these are Python modules that are being executed on the server. All right, so now that we have our inventory file set up and we have all our servers authenticated, we can now create our first playbook. So before doing that, I kind of want to show you guys this Ansible module index. So we just ran this Ansible mping all. M stands for module. And on their website, you can see this module index. So the ping module was actually right here. You can see what it does, and we ran that against our servers just to make sure they were connected. There are numerous modules, and you can do so many cool things with these. We're going to be taking a look at the packaging modules, and we'll be using apt here. So if you guys didn't see, because I wasn't sharing my screen apparently, if I was to go back, this is an example of a playbook, and we'll be writing one right now. So I'm going to create a new file called playbook.yaml. YAML always starts with 3 dashes. And I'm going to call my first playbook, we'll just call it basic. Just give me 1 second. So I'm going to specify my web server's host group. Keep these open. I need to specify which user Ansible is going to execute this playbook with, and I'm going to use root. And then I'm going to start defining my list of tasks. So my first task will be named, let's just install Vim, or actually let's do Git. And I want to, we're going to use the apt module. And the name I'm going to install is Git. So let's just do a quick test. So to execute a playbook, you do Ansible Playbook, and I specify the playbook that I want to execute. And hopefully this comes back without errors. All right. So you can see in this syslog file that some stuff happened on this first minion. This was applied to both because both of them were part of the web servers group. You can see that both of them came back as okay. And something cool to realize here is that 2 came back okay, 0 changed. And let's run it again. Okay, so we're good to go. So if I were to be on this minion, and I would say Git is now installed. So it's pretty simple to be, to install packages this way. So let's do something a little bit more interesting. I want to install Nginx. Okay. This is going to go both those servers again. This might take one moment. So while that's running, we can kind of just take a look at their examples for apt. You can see how this would be, all the different ways that you can kind of format this. You can also, demand that this package is present. You can specify versions. You can essentially give it tons of options to kind of give you exactly what you want back. So while we're waiting for that to finish installing, give it one more minute. Okay, so all three plays came back okay, or all three tasks came back okay, but only one changed, and that's important. It's important because Ansible already knew that Git was installed, and so the only thing that changed was the installation of Nginx. So theoretically, if everything went right, I can take my IP address and welcome to Nginx. It's now installed. So that's just kind of a quick example of installing a service. Since I did it on both, let's just test both to see if they're all right. They're both good to go. Okay, so when you're deploying servers, depending on what environments you're deploying them to, or let's say you have a production environment or dev environment, you'd probably have different groups in your inventory file. Something that Ansible supports, as well as Salt and Chef and Puppet, are variables. So I'm going to kind of go over a basic example of how that might be used. So to use a variable, Ansible allows for Jinja templating. And so I'm going to actually assign a variable to each of my hosts in my inventory file. So one moment. So, and I would like these variables to be different between the two servers, right? So I'm just going to call this content, and I'm going to set it equal to welcome to Ansible, and I will set the content for the second one to hello world. Okay. Now, Ansible allows you to copy files over as in one of their modules. It's called the copy module. So I'm going to create a new file, and I'm just going to call it test.html. I'm just going to put it in here, and I'm going to put my content variable in here. Okay, I just row quit that. And I'm going to go back into my playbook, and I'm going to create one more task. And we will call this add test HTML. And instead of using the app module, I'm going to use the template module. And I need to give it the source. And so, of course, the source is going to be where I had just added that file. And that would be in Etsy, Ansible, test.html. And I want the destination to be so when Nginx is installed, it automatically creates this web page you're looking at right now in this directory. And Nginx comes with a basic configuration to just show you this page when it's installed. But I would like to add a new page. So with the template module, I will also need to give it an owner, the file owner, as well as a group. Okay. So if everything goes right, execute this playbook. Let me just take one more look at this. Just so you guys know, when you're using variables, they have to be surrounded in quotes. I got an error back 1 minute. So I messed up my YAML somehow. I'll take another look at that. So it does not like my host file. I screwed something up in here. I also misspelled hello. That's just wonderful. Please, please. Okay, it changed. And it seems to have added my test.html file. So if I were to go to test.html, welcome to Ansible. If I were to go on my other server, hello world. So it picked up both of these variables and it assigned them to the corresponding server into that template or into that file, test.html, and added them to those locations. We can actually just go in really quick. And for some reason, it dropped my connection, so just give me 1 second. You can see my test HTML file there. We can see welcome to Ansible in it. And if I could just do this other one really fast. Oh, it's the same one. Great. 1 minute. And hello world. Okay, so those are two really basic installations of things. I didn't want to go too much further into more things that you can kind of do. You can get really advanced with things. If we were to go back to these modules, you can actually see like all the different things we're doing. So what we were using recently was the template. And if you didn't want to use template variables, you could use copy. They are integrated with cloud modules. So whether that be Amazon, AWS, and you need to run Amazon commands, you can do that all from Ansible. I believe they have all the big ones, whether that be Azure, Google. I'm sure they have, Linode, basically everybody. And so it's kind of important to explore all these modules when you're first getting started. So for instance, at Neutron, when we do use Salt at Neutron, but it's very similar to Ansible in many ways, is when we want to add a new server, let's say we're experiencing heavy traffic and we want to scale by 5 servers, we can quickly spin up more AWS servers, assign them roles in the inventory in the appropriate groups, and then immediately push all of the configurations to them to essentially write all of the configuration files, all your settings files that point to your different databases, whether that be in your production or dev environments, and then immediately scale up. Does anybody have any questions up to this point? I know that I didn't have my screen shared during my slides, so I'll just give you guys a minute.
Yeah, please type your questions in the Q&A box on the right side of the video presentation. So Michael will be able to see those questions there.
Sorry, this would be in Slack, you were saying? Or on
Slido.
Okay.
I can read it out for you, Michael, but right now there are no questions.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I lost something here.
Yeah, don't Q&A box if that's what you're looking for. I can read the questions for you if there are questions, but right now we are good.
Okay, cool. Honestly, this tutorial is a little bit shorter than most. I want to keep it really simple. So James asked if I've used declarative.
I can read the questions for you if there are questions, but right now we are good.
I see one in Loud's form from James, and he was asking me about declarative playbooks. I have not used declarative playbooks in Ansible. I'm actually more experienced in Salt than I am in Ansible. I find it easier to teach people about Ansible just because of its simplicity and the way that is a kind of a push configuration tool. But it's definitely something to look into. I didn't add this into this tutorial, but if you were to continue with Ansible, you're going to want to start looking into Ansible Roles. And Ansible Roles essentially allow you to create playbooks specific to certain things you're trying to do. And you can name your roles whatever they might be, or whatever you would like them to be. So maybe you have a role that is, your personal website. And if you want to apply your personal website to one of your servers, you would have a collection of playbooks in there that would assign all of those configurations to that given server. This is a really powerful tool. And when I was first starting out, I found it to be very difficult to kind of get my mind wrapped around how it's actually working. And so that was kind of the purpose of this tutorial. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but that's pretty much what I've got for you guys.
Nice. That's a great presentation, Michael.
Oh, thank you. It's my first presentation.
I think it went quick because the execution was flawless, despite the complexity of so many things that you were doing.
Well, I'm glad it all worked out.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to kind of dig into things like this if you have any responsibilities around DevOps or you're interested in it. Like I was saying earlier, so many tutorials that I've seen are really based around kind of showing you how to maybe, let's say, install Django if you're a Django developer, or Node.js. And you do all that manually on a server, or maybe using Heroku, which kind of takes care of some of those things for you. But what you really should be thinking about when you're doing that is, how can I turn that into an Ansible playbook? How can I automate this process so the next time I go about it, it's easier? That is essentially what we've done at Neutron. And at this point, it's, it only takes us a couple clicks to bring a new server into our cluster and to bring everything back up, to where it should be, add it to a load balancer configuration file, so the load balancer is aware that there's a new web server node that it can start pushing traffic to. You can do health checks. You can, quickly restart servers. So for just, for instance, I don't know why I keep losing connection on my minions, but I can do Ansible. I lost connection on all of them. 1 second. So for instance, I could do Ansible A. Oh, 1 second. Sorry guys, I'm having some weird. What am I doing wrong here? Sorry, guys. What am I doing wrong? Sorry, guys.
That's fine. There is another question. Michael, if you want to take it.
Sure.
So Zach is asking, does Ansible work well with AWS autoscaling?
So I have limited experience in AWS autoscaling. I know that, so for instance, at Neutron, when we use Salt, you can basically give AWS servers a template. And in that template, you can, in one of the configurations, you can essentially give it a number of scripts to execute. So what you can do is essentially set it up to automatically register itself with Ansible. And then once that's done, you can use either Ansible Tower, or you can, manually push all those features, all your configurations to it. But I'm not 100% sure. I haven't actually used it in a Amazon autoscaling case.
Thank you.
I'm curious what I just did wrong.
I think that's fine. It covers.
If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah. Right now, those are the questions we received.
No.
Feel free to post your questions. Here in the Q&A section, you can also use Slack room. That's room number 4 for this session.
So I'm going to try this again really quick. There we go. Oh. Go to control master. Yeah, I'm curious on what I'm doing wrong here. But there's a, should I stick around for questions or?
Yeah, so I think there are no more questions. Just a note to the group. Feel free to drop your questions in the Slack room, that is room 4. So people can see those questions and come back to you in that room.
Sounds good.
If not now, later as well.
Now, I was kind of curious on whether or not how much time. I kind of did some playthroughs and I went a lot faster than I was planning to. But I do have on my Medium, if you go on follow my Medium link, and I'll share the slides, I'll throw it into the room right now. I do have a number of Ansible related articles that I've written, which kind of walk you through the basics if you're interested in kind of doing this yourself.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'll just throw that in there.
There is another question. Michael, if you want to take it.
Let me.
So I'm reading this for you. Does Ansible
provide any way for an administrator to develop a catalog of playbooks and accept only variables from end users? Yes. So essentially, if you can actually look at a lot of other people's playbooks, and then you can actually pull those in. But a lot of the time they'll have a template of variables that you would fill out if you're trying to do a specific thing, and you would go through and fill those all out and then run that playbook against whatever servers you're trying to configure. And it would be, those playbooks would be automatically looking at those variable files to then pipe into basically your configuration files or into, you know, the whatever configuration or orchestration you're trying to achieve, if that answers your question. But you're saying accept only variables from end users. I don't know if I'm misunderstanding your question.
Thank you.
Still curious on. Interesting. I'm curious, James, have you used any of the other technologies such as Chef, Puppet, or Salt, or even Ansible?
All right, Michael, do you have any final notes to share with the group? Looks like pretty good.
As simple as this was, I hope you guys learned something. If you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them in the future. You can either message me on Medium or in Slack. I'll be around. Just let me know.
Yeah, thank you very much for the
thank you guys,
Michael, today. Yeah, I think it's a great learning. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye.